Good morning, students. Can you hear me? Am I audible to everybody?
Yes, ma'am. Good
Okay,
morning.
good. Good morning. How was your paper? Sessional exam. Sumit Kumar Jha, Samarth Mittal, Santosh Siddharth, Vishal Thakur, and Naam Manohar Yadav. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. Sumit, talk
Yes,
to
ma'am.
Tejinder ma'am first. Um,
हेलो
मॉर्निंग मैम।
hello. Talk
मैम,
to the
एचओडी सर से बात हो चुका है, वो
तो
अलाउ
प्लीज,
कर दी।
हाँ हाँ, उनसे आप एक बार फिर करवा दो। उन्होंने भेजा मुझे।
क्या बोले हैं सर?
आप कॉल कर मुझे, मैं आपको बता देती हूँ। ठीक है।
ओके।
So we'll be starting with today's topic. And today's topic we are going to cover is there any question related to the previous paper or a part 1 or part 2? How was your paper? Cloud computing paper. Is it okay with everybody? Sagar, Shivam, Shubham, Abdesh,
यस मैम, गुड मॉर्निंग मैम।
good morning. How was your sessional paper, Shivam?
मैम अच्छे थे,
अच्छे थे कि बहुत अच्छे थे?
काइंड ऑफ अच्छे, बहुत
Kind
अच्छे।
of, we can say कि kind of अच्छे थे। चलो, if you have any doubts regarding that paper, you can ask me in on WhatsApp or on phone call or on this.
मैम मोस्टली दे आर थ्योरेटिकल, तो ज्यादा कुछ था नहीं जिसमें। आई मीन इट्स ऑल अबाउट के उसको मेमोराइज ही करना था।
हाँ हाँ, cloud computing, you cannot move into cloud without knowing the basic terminologies of cloud, like
यस मैम, वही तो
what
याद
are the
रखनी चाहिए।
deployment models, what are the uh, other things related to abstraction or
वर्चुअलाइजेशन,
virtualization, and what are the
वीएमएम्स।
VMMs and all these things.
Yes, ma'am.
So
वो तो सब
first you need to see what are those things, only then you can implement those things in practical part. Though we are not having any practical part in our syllabus,
मैम तो प्रोग्राम कैसे करेंगे, वही मैं सोच रहा हूँ कि क्लाउड कंप्यूटिंग में हम पे एक खुद का वीएमएम कैसे बनाएं।
खुद का
ये तो
VMM हम
सर्वर
बना
खरीदने
सकते
वाला
हैं.
हिसाब हो गया ना।
We need that infrastructure first. High जो कहते हैं configuration, we devices we need for high configuration devices. Only then we can make a
So we can
VMM.
just only rent VMMs from others. We
Oh,
cannot make.
okay, yes, you can only rent VMM from AWS, Amazon, Azure, or we can say Hawaii Cloud. You can rent those things. If you want to implement, you want to create your own cloud, you need a kind of, we can say, a training for creating a cloud, as well as you need an infrastructure for creating a cloud. Even the college, if college wants to create a cloud, college need an infrastructure first. Now, college has to buy the infrastructure, but because practical part is not in our syllabus right now, so that is why college is not thinking in that way, that they want to buy but not right now, just because practical part is not
Investments बहुत high है.
no issue of investment and all these things. College has invested so much for you, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. They have invested in big data lab and all these things.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
क्लाउड में भी वो कर सकते हैं. We got the training, मैंने भी ट्रेनिंग ली है हवाई से. They have, we have created a cloud. तो हमने भी क्लाउड क्रिएट करके देखा हवाई की, वहाँ की उनकी लैब पे, थ्रू वर्चुअलाइजेशन. हमने भी वो सारी चीजें जो आप कह रहे हो कि कैसे वो वर्चुअल
जगह तो चाहिए होती
मशीन
है
बनाई
मतलब
है,
स्टोर करने के लिए.
ठीक है. बट दैट type of infrastructure is limited to only the faculty, and for you students you have to pay for those
Yes,
things,
ma'am.
like जो भी कोर्स वो करवाते हैं.
Yes,
बाकी you will get an idea, like मैंने काफी चीजें आपको बता भी दी हैं, like virtualization में दिखा भी दी हैं. AWS की वेबसाइट पे we have created, we have seen these things, like what are the virtual machines, how we can hire those virtual machines, how we can use those virtual machines, how the rent will be, the evaluation will be there, like pay as you go model, and how the technologies are different, like we have studied of autonomic and
yes, ma'am.
distributed and cluster computing, all these things, how they differ from the cloud computing. We have done that comparison too. Now the next topic, part 3, is totally related to, we have started the part 3. This part 3 is totally related to security. Security of cloud, cloud forensic, computer forensic, and you can see on the screen here, I've written some of the topics here that we are going to cover in this lecture. First is identity and access management. Next is principal security concerns, digital forensic, and auth. These are some of the topics that are a part of the security, cloud security. They may be somewhere related to each other. So we'll start with the identity and access management. What is this identity and access management? And there is one slide which we can, एक तो ना आपकी क्लास का यही है, people are coming late and joining. I'm sharing PPT here. Just wait for a minute. I hope now everybody can see this PPT, identity and access management. What is basically identity and access management? We know, I already told you, there is a person named Gartner who is a researcher, and according to the Gartner glossary, identity and access management, that is basically called as IAM. IAM enable the right individuals to access the right resources at the right time for the right reason. So accessing the resources at the right time for right reason means that you want to access resources on any cloud service provider. You need to register there. You need to give your identity for accessing and for managing the things. And that concept of um, proving your identity and accessing access management is basically uh, called identity and access management. Basically, right resources at the right time for right reasons. Identity and access management in an enterprise is about defining and managing the roles and access privileges of individual network users and the circumstances in which users are granted those privileges. Basically, if I am working in an organization and I want to access some kind of data or want to do some kind of operations on AWS, what it means is that my enterprise will provide me a login and password for my identity so that I can access on the AWS, on the Azure, or any service provider. It is my humble request to everybody in your class, kindly be on time. Otherwise, next time I will not entertain anybody in the class. Those users in identity and access management, the user might be customer or employees of the organization. The core objective of identity and access management system is one digital identity per individual. Like I am given a user ID and password to log into some of the devices. Once a digital identity has been established, it must be maintained, modified, and monitored throughout each user access life cycle. Thus, the overarching goal of identity management is to grant access to the right enterprise assets to the right user in the right context. From a user system onboarding to permission authorization to the offboarding of that user as needed in a timely fashion. Basic aim of identity and why we require this identity and access management. If you are using your data, even then you require an identity and access management. If you are using any machine, even then you require identity and access management. You have seen that you are logging to your machine, that is identity checking, authorization checking, assessing. But in case of if you are using computer or device that is far from your place or far from you, or we can say that is on the cloud itself, that needs to prove, you need to prove your identity. The overarching goal of identity management is to grant access to the right enterprise assets to the right user in the right context, from user system onboarding to permission authorization to the offboarding that user as needed in a timely fashion. IAM system provide administrators with the tools and technologies to change user roles. So what IAM do? IAM provide user roles, track user activities, create reports on those activities. So IAM is not only limited to providing a username or password. It provide user role. It provide user role, track user activities, and create reports on those activities. So the role of IAMs is quite broader than only providing the user ID or password. It provides user role. We know various roles that a company provide or can have. So user roles are important. It track user activities, and it also enforce policies on the ongoing basis. So that is the role of IAM. The systems are designed to provide a means of administering user access across an enterprise and to ensure compliance with the corporate policies and government regulations. Identity and access management solutions ensure secure and suitable access to resources distributed across even more diverse technology environments and meet increasingly severe compliance requirements in an organization. So the role of identity and access management is to broader the term is to it is distributed across more diverse technology environment. We have a varied technology environment and they are collaborated or they are distributed and they meet increasingly severe compliance requirements in our way. Because why it is a compliance requirements are severe? Because it depends on different organization to different organization for various compliances. This security practice is a crucial for undertaking for any enterprise. It is increasingly business aligned and it requires business skills and not just technical expertise. So identity management is not just a technical term, it requires a business skill too for accessing and using the data and providing the rules. This is IAM service component diagram. You can see here in the diagram itself, identity and access management component comprises of governance framework, reporting and analytics. It provides authentication services, authorization services, directory services, and user management services. In the diagram here, you can see in the authentication services, we have single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, session and token management. That is these are the authentication services. So you need to have a single sign-on for logging into a machine, a multi-factor authentication. So the multi-factor authentication means we need to have more than one factor for authenticating whether the person is the one that we want, allowing them. And session and token management, we know what is session and token management. We have studied in computer networks. So multi-factor authentication means like I am giving my fingerprint scanning as well as my iris scan, my retina scan. So that will be called as multi-factor authentication, two-factor authentication or three-factor authentication or any number of factor authentication, that is called multi-factor authentication. Now next is authorization services. The authorization services include authorized roles and duties, various rules for you that will be used for authorization, the attributes and the privileged access. We know these are the authorization services that are provided to the various users in an organization for accessing any kind of secured and highly confidential data. Next is directory services. So that directory services include keeping all the identities in a store that is called identity store, directory federation, metadata synchronization, and a kind of because we are dealing with the virtualized environment, that is virtual directory. Next is user management services. User management services includes provisioning the resources, providing the resources, making the governance easy, deprovisioning those user access or the user rights whenever the user is no longer in the company or the employee leaves the company. So deprovisioning should be there. And a method for self-service and dedication is also provided in the identity management and service components. So that needs to be seen while we are dealing with this whole this diagram, this figure covers all the identity management service component. So the I'm again repeating, the service components are basically divided into four parts: authentication services, authorization services, directive services, user management services. And these services like authentication, authorization, directive services, user management services, they itself from the name employees, they have a number of other factors concerned in them, like single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, session and token management. As single sign-on is a very big concept. We need to see, we have a topic related to single sign-on, multi-factor authentication. We'll study that in future. Multi-factor authentication, session and token management. We have done with computer network. We know what is session and token management strategies. And in case of authorization services, we know how we can assign the roles, rules, attributes, and privileged access. And for keeping all those identities, we need some kind of directory services. So we have identity store, directory federation, and metadata synchronization and virtual directory system. For like user management service include, or user will be provisioned for the various identities, or that they will be deprovisioned, and self-service and delegation, etc. So these are the service components of identity and access management, that is called IAM. Did you know that it takes up to 5840 hours, 5840 घंटे लगते हैं to correct the damage caused by identity theft. So if there is a loss or theft of identity, or it may cause up to 5840 hours to recover that, correct that damage. So you can imagine the damage caused by identity theft. So managing the identity, managing the accessing the resources, access management is very crucial and important from the point of view of the organization, because if there is a theft in the identity, that will create a we can say a burden on the organization in the case of theft, as well as on the resources, as well as on the confidential loss of the confidential information. Identity management myths and misconceptions. So whenever we are dealing with the identity management concept, there are some of the myths and misconceptions. Whenever we say we have a system with identity management, or we are setting a system, we are setting our company with the identity management, and there is a one another term called single sign-on. People feel that they are the one and the same thing, like single sign-on and identity management are the one and the same thing. No, the truth is both are different. Single sign-on is a property of access control of multiple related but independent software systems. So we have a single sign-in for different systems, but they are totally independent. Whereas identity management means management of individual users, their authentication, their authorization, and their privileges within or across system or enterprise boundary. So if I am working for some organization, and that organization is working for some working on some AWS or any kind of system, and they are giving me some kind of username or password, that will be called as identity management, or providing the identity for authorization and authentication. While single sign-on, we usually do single sign-on. You must have seen that whenever you are logging to some kind of website, or they will ask you to log in through Facebook, log in through Gmail, or log in through Google. So that concept is called single sign-on. You have to you are using the single signing to refer to the various resources that are on the internet, just because that sign-in that you are providing, sign-on that you are providing, your Gmail and username and password, is authenticated by the Gmail to that very third party. One, what identity theft will do. 1 in every 10 consumers has already been victimized by identity theft. So you can imagine what this identity management is going to cause. Every identity management system, out of 10, 1 is affected with the identity management theft. Next is, we feel that IAM is too big and complex for SMBs or startups. No, it is not. So it should not be kind of myth that identity management is very big and complex, and startups cannot have identity management. whether you think IAM is just too complex for your organization, or if you have been once bitten, twice shy with a conventional IAM solution, the need for identity access management is very much important as an acute component for your security plan and will not go away. So you can own this identity management system for your organization. It is not too big and too complex. 63% of cyber attacks are aimed at small businesses. So identity management is very much important for SMBs, small businesses, as well as for the startups. Next myth: if users are trustworthy, you don't need IAM. It is like that. If we are working in an organization, and organization will say that no, my users are all trustworthy, and I don't need IAM. So we cannot say, because not this is not true. Security breaches are meant to steal confidential data from the system, not directly users. So directly users are not going to breach your confidential information of the organization. Identity and access management solution provide 360-degree monitoring of disparate endpoints and ensure privacy of the organization. Keep only having that trust in the users cannot keep your data secure. So 360-degree monitoring of disparate endpoints and privacy is provided by the identity management system. Next is 62% of smartphone users do not put a password on their home screens. We know this thing. Therefore, whoever gets hold of the phone can access your information and can access your data. So you can imagine the identity, how much important is identity management. Now, next is benefits of identity and access management. Reduced help desk cost and improved services through self-service of password change and access request. It reduces the help desk cost, and improved services are provided by only giving the self-service of password changes and access request. Next, it eliminates security threats from active accounts that have no valid owner or unapproved configurations. Next is improved security and scaling of administrative staff through the division of workload among administrators. It provides a scaling of administrative staff through the division of workload among administrators that have an accurate knowledge of user access needs. It reduced security risk and auditing tools. It reduces the security risk and auditing cost, because if you have an identity management system, if you are only owning an identity management system, it will have a reduced security risk, and it, as it already provides you a kind of we can say secure environment, auditing cost will be reduced in your organization through the establishment of system of records for access change and approvals. Just because identity management not only provide user roles, it tracks user activities and also also create policies for various users. We can create various policies with the identity and access management. It improves the accuracy and reduce costs associated with the creation and revocation of user access rights to internal resources and to resources that are external for your organization. So what is the solution for identity management? There are many tools that are providing. We'll discuss that also. There is one tool called Identicator. It is the identity access management solution, providing with the cutting edge cloud security and smart user access control features. There are many different solutions that are provided in the cloud for identity and access management. This is one of the solutions, and eliminating most of the hassles that come with the online applications. Identec Core cloud-based technology gives you the fastest and easiest access possible to all your files and devices To further maximize user experience, Addend 4 supports all web applications which supports the security and markup assertion markup language. SAML is a authentication standard that is provided with the identity and access management, and it supports that SAML, security assertion markup language authentication standard. How Identicore works, it provides security, productivity, and compliance. Now next is, we'll not talk in detail about Identicore because it is not in our syllabus. Now, why identity and access management? Why we require this identity and access management? Because there may be possibility of weak password. By using single sign-on, which we usually do, organization can eliminate the need for password and therefore overcome the consequences of using weak password. Centralized access control. Using the identity management solution, it provides you a centralized access control management. That is, all users can communicate and interact and are authenticated through a secure channel. So you have a secure channel, all users are authenticated. So the authenticated user can communicate with each other through a centralized access control system. So that is why identity management is important. Multi-factor authentication. Even if you have a strong password policy, there is risk that hackers will get access to a credential through unauthorized means. So hacker can have an access to your password even though it is very strong. Multi-factor authentication provides an additional layer of security and prevents such breaches. It will definitely provide, because we have multi-factor authentication means multi-level authentication. You have one level of authentication. Now you have to cross the another level of authentication to log into some device or machine. Phishing and spear phishing. If users are accessing corporate network through remote location, chances are your traditional security software might fall short. So your traditional security software that you have installed might not be sufficient for the organization or corporate for corporate network through that are remotely located. Now productivity. Why from the productivity point of view, why identity and access management is important? Single sign-on. SSO relieves user from remembering multiple passwords. So it relieves you to remember all those multiple passwords. It lets them sign into any corporate service or resource just as with a single click. It provides an integrated apps. IAM makes a system make it easier to add new application to the corporate network. You can add new application through the IAM, identity and access management. Integrated apps need no or minimum configuration and saves time. Next is application management. It helps you administer your enterprise applications efficiently and tracks user interaction, productivity, and application usage, etc. So next is password reset option is also possible to do identity and access management. SAML based IAM solution eliminate the password and saves a substantial amount of code. So that kind of cost you require for setting a resetting of password is also we can say eliminated using the identity and access management. Though we use password reset option in our traditional system, but in IAM this will be kind of eliminated just because identity and access management provide different types of solutions for accessing your data. From the compliance point of view, we have a single identity. IAM system provides a single consolidated identity for each user to maintain a clear audit trail and streamline monitoring. Audit trail is clear cut that this thing is being done by this person because there is a single identity for managing everything on the particular cloud, and simple streamline monitoring is possible. Streamline passwords or completely eliminate passwords. It allows organization to enforce strong password policies to prevent security breaches. For SAML based applications, it eliminates the need of password completely. Next is with respect to compliance, data analytics and audits. IAM offers complete access control and generates consolidated reports that can be used for compliance management, data analysis, and audits. IAM tools. Identity and management technologies include various tools. They are not limited to password management tools, provisioning software, security policy enforcement applications, reporting and monitoring applications, and identity repository. Identity management systems are available for on-premises systems such as Microsoft SharePoint can be used for identity management, as well as cloud-based systems such as Microsoft Office 365 for on-premises systems. 6 IAM technologies that will have low maturity but high current business values. API security enables IAM for use with B2B commerce integrated with the integration with the cloud. There are B2B commerce integration services, microservice based IAM architectures are there. So there is a concept called single sign-on between mobile application for user management access. So we'll discuss these 6 technologies that that would allow security teams to manage IoT device authorization and personally identifiable data. So what are those? That they are CAIAM, identity analytics, identity as a service, identity management and governance, and risk-based authentication. So we'll discuss each and every one of these. Customer identity and access management. It is basically a comprehensive management and authentication of users. Self-service and profile management. It provides customer identity and access management. Self-service and profile management. Integration with the CRM, ERP, and other customer management system and databases according to the report. So identity analytics is a term that will allow security teams to detect and stop risky identity behavior using rules, machine learning techniques, and other statistical algorithms. So that is the role of the identity analytics in the identity management systems. Identity as a service. It includes software as a service solution that offer SSO, single sign-on, from a portal to web applications and native mobile applications, as well as some level of user account provisioning and access request management according to the report. Another include identity management and governance, that is called IMG. It provides automated and repeatable ways to govern the identity lifecycle. This is important when it comes to compliance with identity and privacy regulation. So whenever you are dealing with the identity privacy regulation and identity management, you should have access to a term called identity management and governance in the organization. Next is risk-based authentication. Risk-based authentication provides take into the context of user session and authentication and form a risk score. So for user authentication, user session and authentication, we can have a risk-based authentication. The firm then prompt high-risk user for 2FA's two-factor authentication, allow risk user to authenticate with single factors. So single factor include username plus password credential according to the report of authentication. So these are the 6 factors. Here there are only 5 factors quoted by me, and I've written 6. So kindly treat it as 5 factors. But IAM means of compliance management. So many governments require enterprises to care about identity management. Regulations such as Sarbanes-Oxley, Gramm-Leach, Belay, and HIPAA hold organizations accountable for controlling access to customer and employee information. So these are the some of the organization that hold up accountable for controlling access to customer and employee information. Identity management system can help organization comply with those regulations. There are some general data protection regulation, and for GDPR is a more recent regulation that requires strong security and user access controls. GDPR mandates the organization safeguard that personal data and privacy of the European Union citizens. This is just an example quoted by somebody for general data protection regulation in the IAM compliance management. So you can imagine if you are taking some kind of, if you want to have an identity and access management for your organization, for your system, you need to be a user, you have an organization, and what kind of service provider you are getting in. I mean to say, with whom you are going to interact, with whom you are going to use the services. If you are using the AWS, the identity and access management system procedure will be different, compliance will be different, policies will be different. And if you are going for Azure or any uh, Hawaii cloud, identity and access management system will be totally different. It depends on from the organization from for which you are using the, for which you are accessing, from which organization you are accessing your data or creating your applications on their net. So for that, identity and access management will be different. So this is one of the example quoted that in the cybersecurity regulation when it got into effect and how identity and access management was used. So next is how IAM works. That is a main concern. A typical identity management system comprises of four basic elements. That includes a direct, that include the personal data the system uses to define individual users. Think of it as an identity repository. Personal data, a set of tools for adding, modifying, deleting the data related to access lifecycle management, a system that regulates user access, enforcement of security policies and access privileges of your data, and auditing and reporting system. So you can see that this identity and access management has four steps. What personal data you want to access or use, a set of tools for adding and modifying or deleting that data, a system that regulates user access. You need a system that regulates the user access or enforcement of security policy and access privileges, and an auditing and reporting system to verify what's happening on your system. Regulating user access has traditionally involved a number of authentication methods for verifying the identity of a user. We have a number of methods for verifying the identity of a user, including password, digital signatures, tokens, and smart cards. Hardware tokens and credit cards, these smart cards serve as one component in two-factor authentication, which combines something you know with something you have to verify your identity. We know how we use smart cards, so it is a two-factor kind of authentication. Credit cards and smart cards we are using. So we have to insert the card in the ATM or in any type of, we have to give our credit card number as well as we have to verify with the password. A smart card carries an embedded integrated circuitry that can be either a secure microcontroller or equivalent intelligence with internal memory or memory chip alone. Software token which can exist on any device with storage capability from a USB drive to cell phone emerged in 2005. So this software tokens is also an example of identity and access management. At the user level, recent user authentication methods are helping to better protect identities. For example, popularity of Touch ID enabled iPhones has familiarized many people with the user using their fingerprint as an authentication method. Newer Windows 10 computer offer fingerprint sensors or iris scanning for biometric user authentication. Next iPhone due to out later this year is rumored to include iris scanning and facial recognition to authenticate user instead of fingerprint scanning. And we have seen this iris scanning and facial recognition is working nowadays for authentication purposes. So the move to multi-factor authentication. Why this we are moving towards a multi-factor authentication system? Some organizations are moving from two-factor to three-factor authentication, combining something you know and something you have and something you are. Correct. So something you know is your password, something you have is your smartphone, and something you are is your facial recognition. So there is a three-level we can say authentication from which we are moving from two-factor to moving to the three-factor authentication system for identity and access management. When you go from two-factor to through three, you have more assurance that you are dealing with the correct user. Now, what is federated identity management? Federated identity management lets you share digital IDs with the trusted partners. It's an authentication sharing mechanism that allow user to employ the same username password to other ID to gain access to more than one network. So that way is called federated identity management. That you can share your digital ID with the trusted partners. So single sign-on is an important part of federated identity management. A single sign-on standard lets people who verify their identity on one network or website or app carry over that identity authenticated status when moving to another. This model works only among cooperating organizations known as trusted partners that essentially vouch for each other's users. So you must have seen and you are doing these things that you have a single user ID and password. From this single user ID password of Google or Facebook or LinkedIn, you can access various websites. Why we are able to access those websites though we don't have their user ID and password? Just because they are the trusted partner. So using the single identity of Google or Facebook, or we can say LinkedIn account, you can have access to various websites, various organizations. You can log into various websites and organizations for your work, for your access rights, just because you have a single sign-on and they are cooperating organizations, or we can say trusted partners. So that concept is called federated identity management or single sign-on. Are IAM platform based on open standard? Uh, there are some standards that we can work for IAM. Authorization message between the trusted partners are often sent using SAML, that is security assertion markup language. So whenever we are dealing with the authorization message between the trusted partners, they work with the security assertion markup language SAML. This open standard, this open specification defines the XML framework for exchanging security assertions among security authorities. So SAML achieves interoperability across different vendor platforms, this SAML, that provide authentication and authorization services. SAML, security assertion markup language, isn't the only open standard for identity protocol. However, there are different standards like OpenID, WS Trust, WS Federation, and OAuth, known as OAuth, which lets user account information be used by third-party services such as Facebook without exposing the password. So whenever you are logging using your Facebook password or your Gmail password, they are not exposing your password. They are providing you the access to those things using some kind of token approach, and that token approach is provided using the various protocols, identity protocols. I am repeating those identity protocols: OpenID, WS Trust, WS Federation, and OAuth. This WS Trust, Web Service Trust, and the Web Service Federation is provided by Microsoft and IBM. And OAuth is also a protocol used for identity management. We discuss this OAuth in detail, which lets user account information to be used by third-party services. IAM vendors. Identity and access management vendor landscape is crowded one, consisting of both pure play providers such as Okta and OneLogin and large vendors like IBM, Microsoft, and Oracle. There is a list of leading players based on Gartner Magic Quadrant for access management, and this was published in 2017, June 2017, about various identity and access management vendors. These include Atos, CA Technology, Centrify, Covisint, ForgeRock, IBM Security and Access Management, Access Assurance, OneLogin, Optimal IDM, Oracle Identity Cloud Service, Ping, Secure Auth. So these are the some of the vendors that are providing the identity and access management services from the this this uh, these vendor list is taken from the Gartner Magic Quadrant for access management. Though in 2020 there may be this list may have expanded. So this was all about identity and access management. Before moving further, there will be one quiz related to this thing. Kindly answer these questions. Dash in enterprise IT is about defining and managing the roles and access privileges of individual network users and circumstances in which users are granted those privileges. Next is Dash allows comprehensive management and authentication of users, self-service and profile management, and integration with CRM, ERP, and other customer management system and databases according to the report. So, what is whether it is CIAM or OOO? I'm repeating this question and these questions again. Dash in an enterprise IT is about defining and managing the roles and access privileges of individual network users and the circumstances in which users are granted those privileges, whether it's identity management or single sign-on. Next is Dash allows comprehensive management and authentication of users, self-service and profile management, and integration with the CRM, ERP, and other customer management system and databases according to your report, whether it's CIAM or OO. Kindly answer these questions. Still, some students are pending. They have not answered yet. Kindly answer these questions. These are the questions related to the topic just covered. We have covered. Should I repeat it again? So I am ending this call here. In Dash in enterprise IT is about defining and managing the roles and access privileges of individual network users and the circumstances in which users are granted those privileges. This includes identity management. Enterprise IT is about defining. And other one is CIAM. Can anybody tell me what is CIAM in the class? What is CIAM?
Ma'am, customer identity and
And
access
access
management.
management. Yes, it is customer identity and access management. So this was all about identity and access management. We'll talk about other topics related to identity and access management. Next is computer forensic. So first of all, what is this computer forensic, or we can say digital forensic? Computer, this is another topic that is in this cloud security. What is computer forensic? Forensic computing is basically a process of identifying, preserving, analyzing, and presenting digital evidences in a manner that is legally acceptable. So anything that you can identify, preserve, analyze, and can show as a digit as an evidence in the legal matter or legally it is acceptable is called forensic computing or digital forensic. Characteristics of computer forensic: it is identifying the those data, preserving the information digitally, analyzing those information, and presenting the information. Need for computer forensic: why this computer forensic need is why this is important? To produce evidence in the court that can lead to the punishment of the actual accused, we can say, to ensure the integrity of the computer system, and to focus on the responses of high-tech offenses started to intervene. So that is why we need to have a computer forensic. History of computer forensic. It began to evolve more than 30 years ago in US when law enforcement and military investigators started seeing criminals get technical. So when criminals get technical, the computer forensic term came into existence in, we can say, more than 30 years ago in the US. Over the next decades and up to today, the field has exploded. Law enforcement and the military continue to have a large presence in the information security and computer forensic field at the local, state, and federal level. Nowadays, software companies continue to produce newer and most robust forensic software programs, and law enforcement and the military continue to identify and train more and more of their personals in the response to crime involving technology. So, law enforcement, what they are doing is they are training the people for response to those criminal involving technologies. The goal of computer forensic is the main goal of computer forensic expert is not only to find the criminal evidence, but also to find the evidence and the presentation of evidence in the manner that leads to legal action of the criminal. So the digital forensic is not only to identify the we can say the criminal. It is to find those evidence to record. We are able to record those evidence or present those evidence in a manner that is a legal manner, so that we can take a legal action to the towards the criminal. Cybercrime and evidence. Cybercrime occurs when information technology is used to commit or conceal an offense. And what computer forensic is doing is it is identifying those cyber crimes. Types of cybercrime: we have child porn, breach of computer security, theft, identity theft. We have studied the identity theft, burglary, suicide, homicide, any sexual assault, and stalking. These are some of the cyber crimes that are very much popular these days, and people are doing those cyber crimes. So to deal with those cybercrime, we have computer forensic, or we need a kind of digital evidence. What is this digital evidence? Any data that is recorded or preserved on any medium in or by a computer system or other similar device that can be read or understandable by a person or a computer system or a similar device. It includes a display, printout, or other output of that data. So it includes a latent as fingerprint or DNA, fragile can be easily altered, damaged, or destroyed. So fragile data can be easily altered, damaged, or destroyed, and can be time sensitive. So there is a kind of, we can say that data, the digital evidence can be time sensitive also. Type of digital evidence: persistent data, volatile data. Persistent data includes meaning data that remains intact when the computer is turned off. Like we have a hard drive in which data is there related to criminal, disk drive, removable storage devices, etc. or USB drive. And volatile data, which is data that would be lost if the computer is turned off, like deleted files, computer history, the computer history, temporary files, and web browsing history. Though there may be a, we can say may be a crime related to web browsing history, but that kind of data is, we can say, digital evidence is volatile digital evidence. Rules for evidences: admissible, authentic, complete, reliable, and believable. From the admissible, we must from the admissible we mean it must be able to be used in court or elsewhere. That data is, or that evidence is called, this is admissible. Authentic: evidence related to incident in relevant way. Some incident happened and that evidence is related in some way, that we can say this data is, this crime information related to the, or evidence related to that is authentic. Complete: you have that a complete evidence of that very crime. Exploratory evidence or alternative suspects. Reliable means no question about authenticity and veracity. So that data related to that crime or that evidence is reliable. Believable means clear, easy to understand, and believable by the jury. Jury means we are talking in terms of the law and court, so that is believable by the jury. So for five, these are the rules of those evidences that you are keeping as digital evidences. First should be admissible, authentic, complete, reliable, believable. As you are a computer engineer nowadays, there may be you have seen some kind of crimes, or you may be aware of those crimes or dealing with those crimes in one way or the other. If you are dealing with, if you feel like your data uh, is not in your hand, and there may be some kind of breach in your data, or if there may be some kind of identity theft in you with your data, or your identity. So keeping evidences should be like, they should be admissible, authentic, complete, reliable, and believable. So only then you can present those evidences in the jury or in the court. So these are called computer evidences. Computer forensic methodology that usually use: shut down the computer, document the hardware configuration of the system. So these are the methods, these are the basically methodology we use to keep digital evidence. First, shut down the computer, document the hardware configuration of the system, transport the computer system to a secure location, make bitstream backups of hard disk and floppy disk, mathematically verify data on all storage devices, document the system date and time, and make a list of key search words. So if you are dealing with any kind of forensic data and forensic information that is in some computer, what you need to do is shut down the computer first, document the hardware configuration of the system in which that evidences are there, transport the computer system to a secure location, make bitstream backups of the hard disk. You need to have backup of all those hard disk and floppy disk, mathematically verifying data on all storage devices, that data is stored on 1 to 2 or 3 devices, document the system date and time when those evidences were taken, and make a list of key search words for those data, or we can say those information. Evaluate the Windows swap file, evaluate the file flags, evaluate unallocated space on that data, search files, file flag, and unallocated space for keywords, document file names, dates, and times, identify file, program, and storage anomalies, evaluate program functionality, document your findings. So these are the steps you can do when you are recording any kind of digital forensic. data. There may be may be possible that some of the steps you may skip, but these are the most important steps you can have for keeping evidences of some kind of data. Applications of computer forensic. So, for a computer forensic is used in financial fraud detection, like we have seen so many financial fraud detection using smart cards and ATM pins and online transaction kind of fraud detection system. Criminal prosecution. For the civil litigation means the civil cases. Corporate security policy and acceptable use of violation. So this was all about digital forensic. What is digital forensic? I'm repeating again here. What is digital forensic? How, what are the characteristics of digital forensic? Need for computer forensic? History of computer forensic, how this thing emerged? Type of cyber crimes? What do you mean by digital evidence? And how we can uh, uh, keep 5 rules for those evidences, and how we can what methodology should we use for keeping those forensic data evidences, for keeping those evidences, what we need to do, what methodology we should follow for keeping those evidences in case of any theft. So this was all about computer forensic. But is that computer forensic is important? No. We have another term, and that term is called cloud forensic. So after studying the term called digital forensic, there is a term called cloud forensic. Now, what is this cloud forensic? Here again, they have repeated the digital forensic, the use of scientifically derived and proven method toward the preservation, collection, validation, identification, analysis, interpretation, documentation, and presentation of digital evidence derived from digital sources for the purpose of facilitating or furthering the reconstruction of events found to be criminal or helping to anticipate unauthorized action shown to be disruptive to the planned operations. We have studied the digital forensic. Cloud forensic is a term that is similarly used in context to the cloud computing model, and that term is called cloud forensic. Cloud forensic refers to the usage of digital forensic science in cloud computing models. So, what are the various opportunities in cloud forensic? Cloud forensic is more cost effective than conventional digital forensic methodologies. In case a cloud need to be shut down for data collection, it can be implemented with very less extra work. So this is a kind of opportunity. Transferring data to another data center within the same cloud. Forensic may be implemented as a cloud service. If you are using the term, we can have a, it is a, we can, cloud forensic is a term we can use with the other uh, services. So challenges in the cloud forensic is legal regulation will be different in case of digital forensic. Legal and regulatory requirements and compliance may be lacking in the location where the data is actually stored, because there may be possibility that theft has done in some other country, and legal regulations we are dealing in some other country, because there will be a problem of, we can say, the location regulation or legal regulations will be different from location to location. Record retention policies. Keeping record or retaining record will be policies we need to see in case of cloud forensic. There exists no standardized logging format for the cloud. We don't have a logging format for the cloud. Though we have a logging format for the digital forensic, but we don't have logging format for the cloud. Each provider log in different formats, making log crunching for forensic difficult in case of cloud. So every service provider have a different format for logging the information, making log crunching for forensic difficult. So for forensic purposes, the things will be getting more difficult. So this is a kind of challenge in the case of cloud computing. Next is identity management. There exists no proper KYC norms, know your customer norms in case of cloud provider. Anyone with a credit card can purchase a cloud account. So that is also a challenge. Anybody, or we can say the criminals or the people who are not who can store or who can steal your data or theft your data can have, they have a credit card, they can purchase cloud account and can access the data and can access the cloud and can cause cyber crimes related to the cloud, or we can say the cloud kind of crimes. Another challenges include continuously overwritten logs. In case of cloud, the cloud keeps working and its logs are replicated and overwritten continuously. So it will pose a great challenge to the forensic scientist to spot the state of the log file at the time of the attempted crime. So continuously overwritten logs will create a challenge in the cloud computing to find the crime, attempted crime. So this is a kind of challenge. Admissibility. Along with the finding the evidence, along with finding the evidence, the scientist must also prove it to be a legal, non-technical person. This part is worse than the real forensic process. So this admissibility is also a challenge in case of cloud computing. Next is privacy. Someone hacked something somewhere. Why should a forensic guy check the data that I have put in my cloud? So this is that you need to have privacy in the cloud you are using. Someone hacked something else somewhere. Why should forensic guy check? So forensic guy will only check if there is crime happening over there. So these are all about topics related to cloud forensic and digital forensic and the various policies, methodologies, challenges, characteristics related to digital forensic and cloud forensic. Only 6 slides are there for the cloud forensic, and because this cloud forensic cover the digital forensic in itself. So next topic is principal security concerns. Before that, there's we'll have a poll here. Kindly answer these questions. Can you see? Dash is the process of identifying, preserving, analyzing, and presenting digital evidences in a manner that is legally acceptable. This is identity management or cloud forensic computing. Next is the use of scientifically derived and proven methods towards the preservation, collection, validation, identification, analysis, interpretation, and documentation, and presentation of digital evidences derived from digital sources. What is that? That's what is the term used for that and that, whether it's a digital forensic or identity management. Kindly answer these questions. Kindly answer these questions. Still, students have not answered these questions. Again, repeating the question. Dash is the process of identifying, preserving, analyzing, and presenting digital evidences in a manner that is legally acceptable, whether it's identity management or forensic computing. Next is the use of scientifically derived and proven method towards the preservation, collection, validation, identification, analysis, and interpretation of documentation and presentation of digital evidences derived from digital sources, whether it's a digital forensic or identity management. So I thought everybody has answered these questions. Still, students are pending. Mind it, these polls, the response to these polls will be considered for your evaluation of your assignment. So kindly answer these questions. I am ending this poll in 20 seconds. Still, students are pending. So, first is dash is the process of identifying, preserving, analyzing, and presenting digital evidences in a manner that is legally acceptable. That is forensic computing is answer. Another one is the use of scientifically derived and proven method towards the preservation, collection, validation, identification, analysis, interpretation, documentation, and presentation of digital evidence derived from digital sources. Right? The answer is digital forensic. So moving further, next topic is principal security concerns in cloud computing. So the main concerns in cloud computing, we can say the principal security concerns in cloud computing include the first one is data breach. Data breaches result from an attack or employee negligence and error. So this is primary cause for concern in cloud platforms. So vulnerabilities in the application or ineffective security practices can also cause data breaches. Employees may log into cloud system from their phones or personal laptops, thus exposing the system to the targeted attack. For such kind of data breaches, what this is a concern, and for that we require identity and access management, single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, federated identity management, and such things. Next is account hijacking, and what is that, and how this is a concern in cloud computing. With the increase in adoption of cloud services, in organizations have reported an increased occurrence of account hijacking. With the increase of adoption of cloud, there is an increase in the occurrence of account hijacking. Such attacks involve using employees logging information to access sensitive information. Attackers are now can also modify, insert false information, and can manipulate the data present in the cloud. So, account hacking is also a principal security concern in cloud computing. By scripting, they use scripting bugs or reuse password to steal credentials without being detected. Account hijacking could have a detrimental effect at the enterprise level, undermining the firm's integrity and reputation. If account got hijacked, you can imagine what it can cause. It can cost nearly 5840 hours to recover from that account, or we can say. This could also have a legal implication in industries such as healthcare, where patient personal medical reports are compromised, or a robust IAM system can prevent unauthorized access and damage to the organization data sets. And we have studied about the identity and access management. Next is a challenge, or we can a concern. A principal security concern is may also be insecure APIs and interfaces, application programming interfaces. Customer can tailor their cloud computing experience according to their needs by using application programming interfaces or APIs. They are used to extract, manage, and interact with the information on the cloud. We know why how APIs are used. However, the unique characteristics of the API leave the door wide open for threats. And the security for APIs affects the security and availability of cloud services and platforms. APIs facilitate communication between the applications, wherein lies the vulnerability. It allows the communication between applications, but that creates a door for, we can say, for theft and lead to a kind of vulnerability. Firms need to focus on designing APIs with adequate authentication and other access control methods and encryption technologies. Insider threat. So in case of cloud computing concern, one is insider threat. What is that? The insider threat is a misuse of information through hostile intent, malware, and even accidents. Insider threats originate from employees or system administrators who can access confidential information. They can also access even more critical system and eventually the data. When the relationship between the employer and the system administrator turns sour, they may also resort to leaking privileged information. So this insider threat is also a concerning principal security concern in cloud computing. So this was all about uh, uh, the various concerns in cloud computing. Moving further, I will show you AWS IAM here, and after that we will move toward the next topic, that is OAuth. So you can see here, this is AWS Identity and Access Management page. Here, if you are, if you have an account, you can create this AWS account and can jump to this AWS Identity and Access Management. So in this AWS access identity and access management, what they are providing you is they are providing you the documentation and management console and best practices. Apart from them, they are also covering the use cases like how we can secure or access control to AWS resources, how there will be a multi-factor authentication possible in AWS, and how we can analyze and access the data on AWS using identity management IAM with integrated with your corporate directory, and how this AIM in AWS, this identity and access management in AWS works. It will allow you to manage IAM users and their access. It will give you to provide you management rules and their permissions, and federate the user and their permissions. Apart from them, it also includes the various best practices that are usually done by various IT professionals and developers, that include creating users. So yeah, you can create users using this IAM in AWS groups. The various permissions, how can you grant the permissions? Auditing in AWS using this CloudTrail, password system, password policies, multi-factor authentications, roles, sharing of various roles and responsibilities, rotating security credentials regularly, conditions restricting privileges for authorized access, and use of root or remove of reduce of root or reduce remove root. So this is AWS identity and access management. In the same way, we can have identity and access management for Hawaii and identity and access management for Azure and the other service providers of cloud. So before using that AWS IAM, what you can do is you can see this video on the right hand side for using the AWS IAM uh, for your usage for your company. So this is all about AWS IAM. Now we'll move towards the next topic, that is OAuth. This is a authentication protocol used for identity and access management. Oh, this is an authorization protocol that is being used for identification and access management. OAuth is an open authorization. What is this OAuth? This is basically a protocol that is used for authorization. It's an open authorization protocol which allows accessing the resources of the resource owner by enabling the client applications on HTTP services such as Facebook, GitHub, etc. It allows sharing of resources stored on one side to another side without using their credentials. It uses username and password token instead. Now, why we use OAuth? You can use OAuth to read data of a user from another application. It supplies the authorization workflow for web, desktop applications, and mobile devices. It is a server-side web app that uses authorization code and does not interact with user credentials. So it is a kind of it is on the server-side web app that uses authorization code, and which authorization code, username, password, or we can say password, and does not interact with the user credentials. So what OAuth is doing, it is checking for the authorization of a particular user without taking user credential. It is not taking my credential, storing any my credential or encrypting my credential. What it is doing, it is providing access to other services to the user credential, we can say interact by the interaction. Features of OAuth. OAuth is a simple protocol that allows to access resources of the user without sharing password. It provides user agent flows for running clients application using a scripting language. So the which language, scripting language is used for interacting, basically that is JavaScript. Typically a browser is a user agent. It accesses the data using token instead of using their credentials. So whenever I want to log into some website, what it is doing, it will be taking my um, password, but not in the form of as a credential. It is only authorizing you is providing authorizing me by the concept of called token and stores data in online file system for the user such as Google Docs or Dropbox account. The advantages of OAuth. Of which protocol we are using nowadays is 2.0. There are different versions, simple OAuth and OAuth 2.0. This OAuth 2.0 is used nowadays. OAuth 2.0 is very flexible protocol that relies on secure software and ensures data between the web server and the browser made private to save user access tokens. OAuth 2.0 relies on secure software which is used to ensure cryptography, industry protocols, and are being used to keep the data safe. It allows limited access to the user data and allows accessing when authorization token expires. It has the ability to share data from the user without having to release personal information. So no personal information is released or exchanged, only a token system work is done for a authorization purpose. And when your interaction with that particular party for which you are using or accessing the data is completed, the token got expired. It is easier to implement and provide stronger authentication. Now, the disadvantages of OAuth. If you are adding more extension at the ends in the specification, it will produce a wide range of non-interoperable implementation. So if you are extending the ends, it will be a kind of a range of non-interoperable implementation, which means you have to write separate pieces of code for Facebook, for Google, etc. If your favorite sites are connected to the central hub and a central hub account is hacked, then it will lead to a serious effect across several sites instead of just one. So if you are connected to a central hub and if central hub got compromised or got hacked, that it will lead to a serious effect on your side and not on your side but on several sites. So that is a concern here in the case of OO. So this is a diagram showing how this OAuth works. Here we can see this is the user and this is the client application. And here we have Google, Facebook, or Foursquare or Twitter over there. So what user is doing is user accesses the resources using the client application. So user can access the resource using the client application. Client app give client ID and password to login via. What you can do is you can client app gives a client ID and password to log in to Google, Facebook, Twitter. User log into client app like via Facebook, Google, etc. You can log into the client app using your Facebook account, your Google account. What it will do, the Facebook, Google will do, because you are providing your user is providing Facebook, Google password. It directs user with the URI and authentication tool. User को वो direct करेगा. What user will do? User accesses the page located at a redirected URI. So it will redirect to a redirected URI. That is a client app. Client application send authorization authentication code, client ID and password to the authorization server. So it will what client application will do, it will send the authorization code, client ID, password for authorization server. After this client ID will send these things, it will send authenticating applications. This authenticated application may be Facebook or Google. It will give you a token. It will return an access token. User can log in using that access token. User logs in and accesses the resource owner using that access token. So in this way it works. What you are doing is whenever you want to access any application, what you are doing is you are giving user ID and password of Google. After giving user ID and password of Google, the this client app will redirect towards the Facebook or Google what you have given. Uh, the client app, what they will do is Facebook, Google, they will provide you authorization code, client ID and password to authorization server. To the authorization, they will give you a token to the client app. This person is authorized person, so you can, in this way you can access the resources and the resources. But this client app and these Facebook, Google, Foursquare or Twitter, they are, we can say, trusted partners. Only then this thing is possible. First, the user accesses the resources. These are the steps that I have discussed. I am repeating those steps. First, the user accesses the resources using a client application such as Google, Facebook, or Twitter. Next, the client application will be provided with the client ID and client password during registering the redirect URI. After redirect UI, user login using the authenticating application. The client ID and client password is unique to the client application on the authorization server. So we have authorization server on which client ID and client password is unique to the client application. The authenticating server redirects the user to redirect uniform resource identify that URI using authorization code. The user accesses the page located at the redirect URI in the client application. The client application will be provided with the authentication code, client ID, password, and send them to the authorization server. The authenticating application returns an access token to the client application. Once the client application gets an access token, the user start accessing the resources of the resource owner using the client application. The client credentials can be used as an authorization grant when the client is a resource owner, or when the authorization scope is limited to protected resources under the control of the client. Client requests an access token only with the help of client credentials. The client credential authorization flow is used to acquire access token to authorize API requests. Using client credential authorization, access token which is acquired only grant permission for your client application to search and get catalog documents. So this is a client, and you can see this is the authorization server. What client is doing, client is authenticating through the authorization server. What authorization server is doing, it is providing the grant access token to the client. The client authenticates with the authorization server and makes a request for access token from the token endpoint. You can see. And in the step 2, the authorization server authenticates the client and provide access token if it's valid and authorized. And what is basically a access token? Access token is string that identifies a user, an application, or a page. The token includes information such as when the token will expire and which application created that token. First, it is necessary to acquire OAuth 2.0 client credential from the API console. Then the access token is requested from the authorization server by the client. It gets an access token whenever a client gets an access token from the response and send the token to the API and that you wish to access. So you must send the user to the authorization endpoint at the beginning. So this, you can see, this is a funny dummy request sent by for authentication purpose. That include client ID, URI, response type. Following are the parameters that are used in this O terminology. You need not to remember this thing for the paper. Just you need to understand the concept behind that. The various parameters include client ID, redirect URI, response type, bearer token. So client ID it should be sent to the client ID of your application. Redirect UI it should be set to the URL. After the request is authorized, the user will be redirected back. Response type The source type include it can be either be a code or a token. The code must be used for server-side application, whereas a token must be used for client-side application. So always remember one thing: when the source type is or they are communicating with the, so it may be a code or a token. If you are dealing with the for the server side, it may be a kind of code. When you are dealing with the client side application, you will be dealing with the token. In server side application, you can make sure that the secrets are saved safely. The client provides an access token to the resource server to access the protected resources. The sources that are protected. The sources must server must validate and verify that the access token is valid and has not expired. But what will be done if it has expired? If it has expired, we need to create again the same token with the same credential. There are two standard way of sending credential: bearer token and MAC. So we'll not discuss into the detail of these bearer token. Only you need to remember these things, that oh, this client and server is going to communicate when we want to access the confidential information. So in case of bearer token, the access token can only be placed in post request body or get URL parameter as a fallback option in the authorization HTTP header. These this is the authorization bearer token. Token value, for example, you can see here, this is get response resource type example.com authorization bearer token. But you need to remember in all things these steps: user, client, application, and credential that you are using, whether you are using Facebook credential, Google credential, or Twitter credential for accessing a particular confidential data using the code and token service. So this was all about OAuth. Moving further, there will be one poll here. Continuously overwritten logs is a challenge in cloud forensic or simple forensic. Dash results from an attack or employee negligence error. This is primary cause for concern in cloud platform, whether it's a data breach or data security. I'm repeating continuously over internal logs is a challenge in which cloud forensic or simple forensic or dash result from an attack uh, or employee negligence and error. This is primary cause of concern in cloud platform, which is whether it's a data breach or data security. So students are pending. Some students have not answered these questions. Kindly answer these questions. So I am ending this phone in 20 seconds. Continuously over internal logs is a challenge in cloud forensics. Next is dash result from an attack or employee negligence and error. This is a primary cause for concerning cloud platforms, that is data breach. So these are the answer to these questions, data breach and cloud. So first is cloud forensic and next is data breach. So now I'll show you uh, active Azure directory, that is basically Azure IAM, Identity and Access Management. So Azure Identity and Access Management is called Azure Active Directory. It provides identity service and single sign-on, multi-factor authentication. And so you can see here there is a single sign-on of options available, conditional access and multi-factor authentication, single identity platform, and other development toolkits. Here you can see these are the IAM tools that are provided: Office 365, Azure, Google Apps, and all these include the Azure Active Directory. You can see here, and here you can see the documentation related to identity management. That is Azure AD features, and this account we have seen in that AWS identity. This account is not free. AWS account for identity and access management and all these things. But this account for uh, taking various Azure services is free. So you can create an account on the Azure for various services like EC2, simple storage services, and other services. What differ from Azure and AWS is that AWS provide free services, but for logging into their account, you need to have registered through the credit card or debit card. But in case of Azure, you need not to have these information. If you are not having any card, you can create the free account and can have access to various services. But the thing is that only the microservices will be free. Microservices in both the cases are free. So the term that is used for identity management and for user services is called Azure Active Directory services. For before using these services, what you need to do is you need to have study the documentation for managing those identities. Like there may be internal identities, external identity kind of things. So here you can see integrating identity into your applications, single sign-on and user provisioning. You reduce sign-in friction and automate the creation of mobile and maintenance of user accounts. This is The reason they have given why you can use Azure Active Directory micro, it involves 1 billion annually, $1 billion annually. So they have given the reasons why you can use Azure Active Directory. So pricing for the universal identity and access management services they have, that is called Azure AD. For Azure AD, you can read the documentation, deployment plans, and this premium feature includes 30-day free trial. It includes data sheets, infographics, and what are the other identities for identity infrastructure as a services, identity and access management best practices. So before taking any kind of identity management services, you need to study the documentation of every service provider. But it is better you study the AWS IAM because that is quite simple than this Azure Active Directory service. This is a very simple IAM. They have given the procedure for creating the users, groups, permissions, auditing, passwords, MFA rules, sharing, rotating, addition, root, etc. Everything they have given here. So this was all about identity and access management. What is that? Their characteristics, advantages, disadvantages, how their identity and access management work. And if you want to quote an example of identity and access management, you can quote the example of this AWS, AWS or Azure. Apart from that, we have studied today principal security concerns. They include 7 concerns. Apart from, we have studied computer forensic and that cloud forensic, or digital forensic and cloud forensic, how they are interrelated and how this cloud forensic work, what are the various challenges in the cloud forensic, we have studied that also. And with that, we have studied one authorization protocol for this single sign-on concept that is called OAuth. So this OAuth is very much important from the point of view of examination. What is OAuth? OAuth communicate and discuss the PPT with you, and that is enough. What is that token and all these things. So in the next lecture, what we are going to do is that is related to encryption and decryption techniques that we will be using in cloud. It, what are the encryption and decryption algorithms that are used in cloud? With that, part 3 will be finished and we'll move towards the part 4, that is of case studies. Though I have discussed the case studies with you with every topic, we will study the case study of IBM, Azure, AWS more in detail, and we'll do some kind of practical if possible. So my concern is we can see we can have an access to EC2 service or simple storage service, or where we can use this service for simple like simple storage service is used by, I already told you, by many of websites like SlideShare and etc. So we'll see those things in detail in the practical part if possible. So this was all about today's topic. Do you have any queries related to identity management or this principal security concern, digital forensic, cloud forensic, and all these things in detail? If you have any query related to these identity and access management, you can see this user groups, permissions, auditing. Say here you can see how we can manage the users, creating user, giving user security credential, put user into one or more groups, giving user a login profile. So these are the steps given by the AWS for creating a user. So in the same way, we can see here creating groups. So managing permission with groups. So creating user, giving user security credential, putting user into one or more groups, giving user a login profile. Next is, you can see here the third one, permissions. So how we can grant permissions. In this way, like action, we can grant permissions like action, resources, effects, conditions, the rules, how we can give actions. These are given here in detail. Next is auditing. For auditing in AWS is done using the CloudTrail service. Next is roles, IAM roles and Amazon EC2 instances. We can see IAM roles and EC2 instances here. So these are the things you can study for creating users groups, as giving permission, auditing, for multi-factor authentication, for privileged users. This is a multi-factor authentication. Virtual MFA device, universal second factor security key, hardware key, or FOB MFA device. These are things you can study only. You need not to remember these things for your exam purposes, because that is not a part of your syllabus. But for your study and for your knowledge, you can see these things, create user account and access some of the services and see how these services works in the AWS, in the Azure, or in the Hawaii cloud. Is there any query related to this IAM in AWS, or anything related to IAM, identity and access management, principal security concern, digital forensic, cloud forensic, or OAuth? Anyone? If you have any query, you can raise hand. Nobody, no query related to all these security concerns in cloud computing? Sheesh, Sani, Jobbandeep. Jobbandeep, is everything clear to you? Prabnoor, Sagar,
हाँ जी मैम क्लियर सब यस मैम
is everything clear to related to this topic? AWS IAM. रोहित,
यस मैम
कोई क्वेरी है तुम्हारी?
नहीं मैम
ये सिंपल था, थ्योरेटिकल था. IAM क्या है? How we can have identity and access management while we are working in an organization and we want to access AWS or you for creating our applications or anything on the cloud. So we can have identity, how we can set the users, roles, responsibilities, groups, and how can we divide the user among the various groups. These was all about identity and access management, principal security concerns, and cloud forensic. So I am ending this lecture here.